everybody. Thank you for giving up some time on this chilly November evening. I'm going to talk about assistive technology as part of access arrangements, and I have to say I think the title went out as assisted technology. That's what autocorrect does when you type things and don't check them. So if there was any confusion, very sorry about that. Some of you may know of me, may have heard me speak before, but I'll give you just a bit of introduction about who I am and what I do. As Aaron mentioned, I chair the British Dyslexia Association New Technologies Committee, and I'm an assistive technology consultant and researcher, and I work closely with the accessibility group at the University of Southampton. I'm not a specialist teacher, I am a technologist, and I evaluate how technology can work. So I sort of sit in between the teaching and the technical real bods who do the coding type. And I got into the area of access arrangements when 2 years ago I took over chairing the technology committee, and at that time the access arrangements had changed to allow more technology use within access arrangements, and we wanted to try and put together some information, some resources. And it was like opening a Pandora's box, that we found that there was lots of questions, lots of areas of concern, and a lack of information. So pretty much solidly over the last couple of years we've had a focus of working with colleagues at the BDA on trying to unpick the access arrangements and work with the exam boards to provide better information and better facilitation of using assistive technology within access arrangements. Now this webinar is going to concentrate on GCSE, A-level and functional skills exams within England, Wales and Northern Ireland. I will touch on Scotland as well. For those of you who are working outside of those educational spheres, such as in higher education, there's things that are relevant, but particularly this is to do with the access arrangements, the JCQ access arrangements. So as Aaron has said, I'm happy to answer questions at the end, and unfortunately with these types of webinars there is a lot of information to try and get across, and that's often easier with a lot of information on the screen. So I do apologise, this might seem a bit of a text-heavy presentation, but I've got a video in if all the technology works as well, so we can see things in practice. So where do we start? Well, I think it's always important to start to think about why we are using technology, and we know from the last 15-20 years when we've been using technology with dyslexic learners that it can motivate and help learners catch up with peers. It can remove barriers to accessing the curriculum so they don't fall behind, and it can enable learners to work independently, develop strategies that will help them overcome their difficulties once they leave education. So although it may be seen as an easier solution to have a support worker working alongside a student all the time, we all know once you leave education that's not the reality of day-to-day life. And that's possible. Sorry. I'm very sorry, I'm getting a technical warning up on my screen, so I'm just going to make sure that everything is working. Aaron, can you tell me, can you still see my slides? Hello? Hello, Aaron? Okay, let's try again. Hopefully we'll manage to get the screen sharing working again. Okay, let's try again.
Sorry, Abby, I've muted my microphone on my actual headset as well as muting it on the system. I can still see your screen. Can you can? Right. I can see it now. It's fine. It's working now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just had a warning up from the webinar system saying it had paused. Okay, so sorry about that. But where technology is being used quite extensively within schools and within further and higher education and even the workplace now, when we're looking at assessment, it's a relatively new tool and approach to use for access arrangements. And why we're particularly worried about that is if we look at the stats of disabled people within education, many do not hold formal qualifications. So this is some stats that's put out by the the Office for Disability Issues that show that disabled people, 19.2% don't have any form of qualifications. Now obviously that includes all disabilities, but there will be some in there who the lack of qualifications is due to their lack of literacy skills. And within the sort of more current learners and cohort, if we look at candidates who are achieving 5 or more A star to C, including maths and English, we can see that there's a very big difference between the number of candidates who achieve that sort of magic marker of standards who don't have special educational needs. That's 58.8% of everybody, but when we start to look at those with special educational needs, and this includes those that are in the old language school action as well as Action Plus, 22.4% achieve that 5+ A star to C, including maths and English, and that is particularly because of trying to achieve English GCSE. And we can see that when we look closer at those cohorts of students that are specifically identified within the statistics and reporting as with a specific learning difficulty, that figure drops even lower to 17.5%. And when we compare that to other groups of students who may have a physical barrier to accessing the exams, such as those with a visual impairment or physical difficulty, although they aren't achieving as well as children with SEN or disabilities, they are still managing to get further qualifications. So there is a particular concern about those candidates or learners with specific learning difficulties not able to demonstrate their skills to the best of their abilities within high-stake arrangements and exams. So, access arrangements. I'm sure most of you are aware of what access arrangements are. They are provided by the exam board to enable candidates who may need reasonable adjustments to have special conditions within GCSEs, A-levels and functional skills. And to put that into context, statistics for this summer's exam series have just been released, and there were 55,650 candidates who had access to a reader and 28,550 who had access to a scribe. And the vast majority of that was provided through what we call human support. It's a bit of a strange term, but that means somebody being in the exam room with them to provide that support. We've just started to report whether people are using computer readers, and we'll talk a bit more about that, but actually we're looking at 2,200 people use a computer reader. That's only 5% of those who could use a reader. So we know that currently at the moment there's a very limited use of technology for access arrangements. And just to put it again in the context of what access arrangements are legally are the duty of the awarding body to make reasonable adjustments to their assessment process. So it's part of the Equality Act requirements on the awarding bodies. They do have specific exemptions where it comes to anything that will affect the assessment standards or the objectives of the assessment, but they are required to make reasonable adjustments. And the use of the technology will depend on the candidate and its suitability for the assessment. But when they are developing the access arrangements, they're always considering whether it is reasonable as well as if it affects the standard of the assessment as well. So over the past 2 years we've been talking to schools, we've been talking to the exam boards, as I said, about what the experience is of using assistive technology in exams, and in particular my colleagues on the technology committee, Malcolm Litton, has been working with schools within the Southwest to ask them what are they doing, how are they using it, and trying to follow it through and follow their experiences. What we found is many perceive it that the lack of use of assistive technology exams is because of lack of access to technology, because within the access arrangement it must be a usual way of working. What surprises most people is they find out that they normally have the assistive technology already available, and I'm going to be talking later about free tools that are built into the applications that are on practically every computer or tablet that is available within a school or college. Lack of transparency in the process and best practice to using assistive technology in exams, and that's why I'm doing the webinar tonight, is really to help people unpick the processes and explain how they could go about using assistive technology in exams. But unfortunately, despite us repeatedly asking both Ofqual, the regulators and the exam boards, they're not prepared to put together information particularly to do with the use of assistive technology in exams. So that is hampering access to it at the moment. Lack of confidence that it will work. Now this is a problem particularly to do with technology. People don't always believe it is going to work, but then when you're in the situation of that candidate's got one opportunity to do the exam and it has to happen at a certain time on a certain day, you want to know that the arrangements you've put in place for them are going to work, and the candidate wants to know that as well. So again, disseminating as much information as possible about the use of assistive technology does build confidence. And we're really lucky in that, well, lucky is one way of putting it, in that there's been projects within Scotland funded by SQA, which is both the regulator and exam up there, with an organisation called the Call Centre, to develop resources and processes for using assistive technology within their exam system for the last 10 years. So we work closely with them to look at their resources and see where they can apply and use their experiences as well. So I'll be pointing to you later towards some of their resources, which are very useful. So sum that up, really staff training and confidence is key. And the way of selling that within a school or to candidates is that we found that students are more confident and independent when they're using technology instead of human support, some students in particular. And also we can reduce the costs for schools because they don't have to provide the human support in the hall. Now some people might think, well, you know, I employ that teaching assistant anyway, she's just doing a reading position within an exam instead of being in the classroom, but that's still a cost to the educational institution, the school and college, because that person isn't available to help all the rest of the children within the school. They're tied up within an exam situation. So we're able to free up resources, and in particular schools and colleges are now saying the demand for readers in particular is so high it's become very difficult to timetable enough staff and have enough staff available. And that's one of the reasons why Scotland is so far ahead of us in this area, is because they have a requirement that it is one reader per candidate and one invigilator at the same time. So each reader had to be housed in a separate room. So they quickly started to look at using technology to support access arrangements within exams because it just wasn't scalable to continue to use people instead. So what types of assistive technology can be used in access arrangements? And I'm going to go through 4 particular areas this evening. I'm going to touch on word processing, computer reader, read aloud, and speech recognition and other tools to assist with a candidate who would otherwise have a scribe, a person writing the exam for them. So first of all, we're going to look at word processing, which is a very common access arrangement. And one of the reasons that it's become particularly easy to use the word processing access arrangement is there's no requirement to apply for word processing use. But there has to be the evidence that it is the usual way of working, and that must be documented by the school. And there must also be a permanent reason why a candidate is using a word processor. It can't be solely down to choice, but it can be because of poor handwriting or slow handwriting or similar. But there isn't a process required to go through to qualify that that candidate has a specific processing need. If a candidate is using a word processor, this is where we start to get a bit more technical, spelling and grammar checkers must be switched off, and that's unless they are also allowed to have a scribe as an access arrangement. So you must ensure that the spelling and grammar checker is turned off. Tablets or iPads can be used as well, and one of the advantages of using a tablet or an iPad is battery power tends to be much better, much longer than a laptop. However, typing on a tablet or an iPad is quite a different experience to a laptop, so it is not good practice at all to just expect a student to be able to type in that environment when they haven't experienced it. And we've had some candidates report that they find it very difficult to use a touch screen without the kinesthetic feedback of the keyboards that they would have on a normal laptop. It is possible for students to switch between handwriting and typing answers in exams. For example, geography may require both long and short answers. It may be simpler to draw within a question paper and then type. That's okay, but as long as it is marked up with a word processing cover sheet at the end of the exam. And in English functional skills exams, for those of you working in the further education sector, word processing with a spell checker is allowed on any exam. Now, one of the key things here is turning on and off the spell and grammar checkers, because you need to explain this a bit to the candidate about what they expect. So spelling and grammar checkers and predictive text and autocorrect must be disabled. And it is particularly difficult to do this within Microsoft Word. You can turn off the red squiggly line that appears under spelling mistakes, but if a candidate knows where the button is on the toolbar, they can still access the spell checker. Therefore, we recommend that you use a more basic word processing tool such as WordPad on Windows, and that doesn't have a spell checker built in. But if a candidate is using WordPad, then they will have to handwrite on the top of it their candidate names, because there isn't a facility to do a header or footer within it. With iPads, it is possible to disable all the spelling tools within the operating system, such as autocorrect and predictive text within iPads, there are many tools which allow typing which don't have a spell check, such as the built-in notes field don't have an additional spell checking facility. At the end of the slides, there are a few links, including one specifically relating to setting up iPads for exams, which is from the call centre in Scotland. And Aaron will be sharing these slides afterwards, so any links and further information you will have access to. One of the possibilities with a candidate using a word processor is they are able to change the colours and fonts to suit them, so you don't need to request the exam paper, the answer paper within a specific colour. JCQ recommends a minimum of 12-point font size and double spacing line within word processing documents anyway to assist with marking. But if you are using WordPad, it's not possible to change the background colour of the document within the WordPad application. You have to change the colours within the whole computer system. And there are a couple of links there on the slides. One of them is to the btatech.org website, which is the website run by the New Technologies Committee, which has links to a number of free colour changing applications, and these provide like an overlay over the top of the computer. So if you have a candidate which has visual stress, you can set up WordPad to be the right font size and font style, and then you can use a colour wash program to act like an overlay to change the colour that they are reading on. It's a bit more complicated if you want to use tablets, because colour of the background is app specific, so you have to find an app which will give you the different coloured backgrounds, and the problem is most of those also include a spell checker option as well, so colour backgrounds is quite difficult to replicate on an iPad. Okay. So computer readers, and this is the real meaty part of the issue, because this is where a lot of candidates are using assistive technology now, is where we're starting to see people very interested. And this was really the key that we started looking into this area and identifying what are the problems. So first of all, I'm using a term called computer reader, and you won't see that in any assistive technology or guide to using technology with learners who are dyslexic. It's not a term that we use, it's a term that is used within the access arrangements, and it's used by them to differentiate between a person reader and a computer reading text. Now, within the current access JCQ access arrangements, computer reader can be used by any candidate who qualifies for a reader in all exams, including those that test reading. So that includes English GCSE and modern foreign languages as well. And that is because when a computer reads off the screen, it is only reading the text that appears on the screen. It is not reading, it's not giving any additional intonation or any clues apart from what's on the screen. It might also not read that accurately. Things like abbreviations can sometimes be misinterpreted. So there is still an aspect of decoding that is left to the candidate, and the exam boards and the regulators have accepted that by using a computer reader, the candidate is still demonstrating that they are independently reading, that they are able to independently read. Now, computer readers covers two different types of technologies. The first are screen readers, which are for non-sighted users. So this reads all the screen elements and allows navigation by keyboard and audio. Now, we're talking from a dyslexic learner's perspective, so we wouldn't be using a screen reader for a sighted or a dyslexic candidate, but that is a different type of technology. Text-to-speech tools are those that are designed for sighted users, and those are ones where you can control the speech by selecting text or through toolbar buttons, and they often offer colour highlighting to assist with tracking the text. So, oh, I've jumped ahead of myself. So just a few things about computer readers versus human readers. They offer an independent means to decoding the text. The cost and logistics of providing human readers means that some candidates do not always receive the provision they need, and computer reading support is scalable. We've also, when looking at the research, there's been quite a few studies in the US where they are moving towards computerized exams for most candidates. It's sort of going across the states at the moment for their high school exams. They've done quite a few studies, and they found that where candidates have access to text-to-speech to read back text, they check the text more often. And that's also reported within case studies that the candidates feel more confident and able to ask because they don't want to repeatedly put their hand up and ask somebody to come and read the question to them again. Whereas when they're using the technology, they can go back and press play again. And if you think about it, when we're reading questions, when we're showing pupils how to access an exam question, we tell them to look at the question, look at a resource, materials, go back and look at the question again. So it's understandable that candidates do need to have questions reread to them a number of times, and they may be discomfort. But there's a bit of evidence that actually for those candidates that are happy using text-to-speech, they gain more confidence and feel more independence. Anecdotally, from schools that are using text-to-speech at the moment in exams, those that we've spoken to who offer it to all candidates, there are about a third who love it, and there are about a third who get on with it okay, and there are a third that hate it. And I find that statistic across all different areas of technology. So there will always be those candidates who just don't get on with the voice, don't understand what the program is doing, and it shouldn't be forced on any of them, but they have to understand that they may not then get all the support that they could access in an exam such as English GCSE, where only a computer reader is allowed. In terms of trends, this is a slide provided by the call centre just showing how over time they have found that what they call use of ICT and digital question papers, which is the yellow line at the bottom, that as access to those papers has increased and knowledge about those papers increased, the actual demand for human readers and scribes has dropped as a percentage of their access arrangements. So it takes a number of years for schools and organisations to become confident with the technology, and of course being technology, it never stands still, but we know over time people do like to use the technology and become familiar with it. So just to talk about one specific part of the technology, I'm sure those of you who use text-to-speech are aware that some tools are more basic, some have more sophisticated tools, and one of the things that we talk quite a lot about is highlighting with text-to-speech. And this allows text to be read aloud and be highlighted at the same time. And in a minute I'm going to attempt to show you a video of this in action. And this particularly assists learners with tackling text on the page if they have poor concentration or working memory, poor audio processing or hearing difficulties, because it enables them to track what word is being read aloud at the same time. And if you're considering whether to introduce text-to-speech as an access arrangement in a school, this is often a decision of whether you're going to be able to go with a free or low-cost option or one that is more sophisticated and enables that synchronized highlighting. It also helps decode words or acronyms that may be mispronounced, because the candidate can track on the screen what is being read, and they can go back and reassess and review words that are not being pronounced correctly. And when we talk about dual colour highlighting, that's when we apply two colours, and it's often one colour to text that's been selected or text within a sentence, and one to the spoken word, so you get that double assistance. Okay, well, let's have a go with this video. So I'm now going to show a little video that I've made, which is using a PDF past paper. So this is a past paper exam. It's being shown using Adobe Reader. Now, Adobe Reader is the free PDF reader available from Adobe. When we're talking about computer readers and PDF papers, then it's always worthwhile using the Adobe Reader and not any other PDF applications for Windows, and that's because it's the one with the most accessibility tools built into it. It's the one that most assistive technology works best with. It also has options like changing the background colours, so you can change it, as you'll see on the screen at the moment. You can change the size of the font as well within it. The yellow background is there because it's an example of changing the colour background within the PDF. Now, let's just get this video up and do a bit of technicalities. Video will demonstrate reading aloud a PDF exam with a text-to-speech tool. The text-to-speech tool in the video is called Adobe Reader. It is a free toolbar that will read aloud selected text. It does not highlight the text as it is read, and it does not come with a voice. This is an exam paper in Adobe Reader. We have changed the background colour to make it easier to read for the candidate. First, the candidate selects the question, and then they press play.
Read Source 1, the online article, UK's rarest spider moves house in a plastic bottle, and answer the questions.
Next, we will change to the PDF file containing the source material. The source material has been recreated to look like a newspaper article. Any text that the candidate may need to read in the article can be selected. We will now select words and sentences and hear them spoken by the computer.
News. UK's rarest spider moves house in a plastic bottle. Ladybird spider to be released into new areas by conservationists. Camilleras. The UK's rarest spider is to be saved from extinction when conservation experts release the species into new areas using plastic bottles.
Abby, the sound is going a bit funny.
Okay, sorry Aaron, what was that?
The sound is going a bit funny, it was, so we couldn't hear the last bit.
Okay, well hopefully you've got some experience there. I'm going to show you another bit of video in a minute, and hopefully you'll understand that will be with highlighting, so you'll see where the text is coming. With webinars, we have to hold microphones over speakers to get audio out, which makes it a bit more complicated. But just to explain a bit about what was shown there, so that was a past paper in a PDF file, and it is similar to what is provided by exam boards for those using assistive technologies. It's using a tool called Ivona Mini Reader, which is a free tool, but it's a bit difficult to get hold of at the moment. There is a link in the slide to download the paid-for version, and then you have to sort of uninstall the paid-for version to get the free version. And that's using the Windows 8 text-to-speech voice. So it's a free voice if you've got Windows 8 installed, and it is a British voice, but it's one of the more robotic voices. And as you will have seen there wasn't any highlighting or tracking on the screen as it was read. It was just selecting it and pressing play. So the next bit of video that I'm going to show is with a more sophisticated tool, which has a PDF toolbar which allows reading within the PDF paper and dual highlighting and a higher quality voice as well.
Conservationists.
The next example will show the same paper being read aloud with Read and Write Gold. This program can highlight the text as it is read aloud within a PDF file.
Search. UK's rarest spider moves house in a plastic bottle. There are now more than 1,000, thanks to the efforts of conservationists, and the spider is ready to be released into new areas.
Okay, so hopefully that just gave you a different idea of how different programs can work within exam papers with different voices, the technology allowed. So I was focusing now on showing a PDF paper, and let's talk a bit about how do you get a exam paper for use within an exam. Now, within the JCQ arrangements, these are called non-interactive PDF papers. And in the last 2 years, they've started to say that you can order these through the modified paper system, and that's because they recognise that the previous advice of scanning in the paper and then using OCR software to recognise the text caused loads of errors, and text was all over the place, diagrams in particular were affected, and there wasn't any guarantee that the candidate would get an accurate text, let alone have time, the school have time within the 1 hour they were given to open the package and scan it in to do it correctly and make sure that it was all accurate. So they now have this system of non-interactive electronic question papers or electronic PDF papers, and they can be ordered through the modified paper system. That's what it says in the book. And they must be ordered ahead of the time, and it says that answers can't be entered into the PDF paper. Now, we know from talking to the boards about what they did over the summer, they are still adapting their processes to providing these PDF papers, and at least 2, which were OCR and AQA, just put all the PDF versions of the papers up on their online portals that could be accessed by the schools in the hour before the exam. So there wasn't a requirement to order specifically through the modified paper system, although they still preferred to do that so that they could log that that candidate had the access arrangement of a computer reader as well as a reader option. But they actually said the papers were there, you could just go and download them. That's how they distributed them. Edexcel also made the papers accessible so that you could enter the answers within the PDF papers, whereas all the other exams said that if you were using a word processor, that had to be entered into a word processing document separately, or handwritten if there wasn't a word processing requirement. So we're still at a stage where the processes within the exam boards are evolving, and we're working very hard to try and get them to improve those processes. Any feedback you have from using PDF papers or exam papers over the last year, or any questions you have, please do talk to the exam boards, because they need to know what centres want, what schools want, as well as talking to them at a higher level as well. One of the things that it does say within the access arrangements is that computer readers, if they don't always read the content correctly, even in an exam where a human reader isn't required, a candidate can ask for single words to be read aloud by a human person. And that's a sort of a caveat there, because they recognise that the papers may not always be accurately read or correctly read. However, myself and other colleagues, assistive technology technologists, are working to create standards that we will be asking the exam boards to test all their exams to, so that they can then say to schools, well, we know that it is going to work accurately with the set assistive technologies that will also be working to that standard. So we hope in the next year or two that we will have some more consistency across the boards within the rest of the UK. Within the Scottish system, the SQA papers are tested both internally and by the call centre as well, and they have a sort of an ongoing process of quality afterwards as well, of revisiting the papers. So I've just flick over this slide. When you get it, it's got two links to some videos of students actually talking about their experiences. The first one, Pre-Snell School, is in Stockport, which is talking about Text Up, Read and Write Gold. The second one is candidates in Scotland who are talking about the digital exams. Just to touch on computer readers and online assessments, particularly candidates who are using functional skills exams. Online assessments are mainly created using flash technology, which is not accessible to assistive technology. If you have got candidates who want to use a computer reader in functional skills, as soon as possible contact the exam boards and ask what they are going to do and provide. Ask for sample texts. Some of the boards will provide PDF alternatives. Some of them will provide specific versions of the tests for computer readers, but you are allowed to use a computer reader within functional skills. English exams, it's just a technology barrier that they're trying to address at the moment. Another specific case to be aware of is in modern foreign language. It is possible to use a computer reader, but you have to have a suitable voice installed. So where we've had reading with English in that little video, the candidate would have to switch to a different voice within the program to then read in French or Spanish or German or whatever they were doing. So it's both a technical requirement of knowing that the voice is installed on that particular laptop, and also that the candidate is happy to switch between English and whatever else. So recommendations on what computer readers there are. This is just a few that we know of that we've tested. There are many, many text-to-speech programs. First of all, Adobe Reader has its own built-in text-to-speech tool called Read Out Loud. However, it is designed for visually impaired users. It's very difficult to control. You use keyboard shortcuts, but it is there, and it is a good way of trying out whether things work. Ivona Mini Reader was the toolbar that was being used in that video, but as I said, Ivona they've taken away the links of how to get to it. Another alternative, free alternative, is Natural Reader, but we find that it's not as reliable as Ivona Mini Reader. Now, both of those being free don't come with any additional voices. They are both provided by companies that you have to buy the voices separately. So you only have whatever Windows has got installed on the computer. If you wanted to have a better quality voice, the government provides high quality voices in Scotland for the Scottish, anybody within education in Scotland. There is options to get high quality voices if you're in further education or higher education free of charge from TechDis, called TECHDIS, and they have a Jess and a Jack voice, so you can apply and get those free voices there, quality voices. And there is a Welsh language voice available from RNIB for candidates doing exams in Welsh, but there isn't for the school community a free high quality voice available. ClaroRead SE is a very basic version of a basic toolbar which just has a play and a stop button and a couple of other tools, but it's paid for, but it does come with voices as well. So that's the most reliable paid for version that comes with a good quality voice. And then there's the much more sophisticated text-to-speech tools like Text Out Read and Write Gold and Dolphin Say Hatso, which have a multitude of reading and writing tools which can be used in exams, but you have to make sure you turn off the dictionaries and the spell checkers and the word prediction. But both companies provide information on how to do that. In terms of the iPad use, which is increasingly popular in schools and in Scotland, the best app being recommended at the moment is Claro PDF, because you can change the background and you can do annotations and write on the PDF, and it does have text-to-speech. There's a link at the bottom to an article. We try and keep it up to date, but as I said, there's links in this slide, so when you get the slide, you'll get that information. So moving on, because we're behind time, I'll get to the reading aloud situation. So reading aloud, again, there was a change in the access arrangements last year for 2013, which allowed for a specific version of the reading pen. Many of you may have tried the reading pen in the past, called the exam pen, which allowed candidates who would otherwise have a reading aloud access arrangements to use it to hear single words. There's no need to apply for an access arrangement and no testing required, but it must be the usual way of working, and particularly with this technology, it has to be something that candidates are familiar with. So the exam pen is bright orange. It looks like the picture on the screen, and it scans a word or phrase by a person scanning over the single word. They have to scan over it consistently, and it takes quite a lot of practice. And the candidate must be able to recognize whether it has scanned the word or not, because it could read a different word to it. On the slide, there's a link there to a case study, a video case study provided by Scanning Pens, who sell the pen in the UK, which will give you a bit more information about how it is. From my experience with using reading pens, it's a bit of a 50-50 whether people get the knack or not. So it does take a lot of practice, but they do provide independence. They are simple to implement as an access arrangement, and can give candidates that additional boost for confidence. Moving on to access arrangements for scribing. So if a candidate qualifies for a scribe, a range of technology can be used instead. They can use a word processor with the spelling or grammar checker and autocorrect turned on. They can use speech recognition, or they can use word prediction. Now, as soon as you start to use a scribing access arrangement, then those exams which have marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar may be affected, and also only speech recognition can be used in modern foreign language, and the regulations state that with modern foreign language the candidate must dictate every letter of the words, letter by letter, which is impractical. I haven't heard of anybody who's managed to achieve it, although it could be done by repeatedly at the end of the dictation of then spelling out the words and recording that spelling separately. So people are particularly interested about speech recognition. Now, speech recognition is when you talk into a microphone and the text is transcribed, so that's using usually a headset microphone. There is the main commercial product is Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is for Windows, which is now version 13, or Dragon Dictates for Mac. In the past, Dragon took quite a bit of training. You can now plug it in, install it, and get going without doing any additional reading to train to your profile and get pretty accurate transcription, but there's still an element of training required for the candidate themselves to get used to dictating, to get used to correcting their text on the screen. There is also speech recognition built into Mac and Windows operating systems as well. They can be trained to improve the accuracy, and they are not as they're a bit less flexible with speech, and so if you've got somebody who isn't confident, makes lots of ums and ahs, isn't very good at speaking grammatically, then the dictation rate of being correct drops quite quickly. Now, there is speech recognition built into iPads and built into Android tablets, but they all require an internet connection, so they are not allowed in an exam. So if you are looking at using speech recognition, they do need to be on either a Windows or a Mac computer. Okay. So speech recognition is only allowed if the disability or difficulty has a substantial and long-term effect on the candidate's writing. They cannot write or type independently or have sufficient speed to record their answers even with extra time allowed. And it's really considered a last resort access arrangement. Candidates who qualify for a scribe can also, as well as speech recognition, use a word processor with the spell checker enabled. And they can also, with voice-activated software, use predictive text to work with the word processor. And they can also use a computer reader to read back the options within the word processor as well. So there's quite a complicated combination of technology that can be used for scribing. Okay, and just to point out there that candidates who use the scribing will not have access to all the marks that are awarded for spelling, punctuation and grammar. With something like speech recognition, a candidate can dictate the punctuation, full stops, commas, colons, etc., and that should be marked on the scribe cover sheet to say that the punctuation has been dictated, so that they do gain those marks. And the examination boards say that it is literally a paper-by-paper basis of how that would impact the candidate's marks. So it's very difficult to give an accurate assessment of how much that access arrangement would impact those marks. In terms of just touching on word prediction, now word prediction is used to reduce keystrokes and to aid spelling. So if you've got somebody who is a poor typer, they may use word prediction to type quicker, but it also may be for selecting words. And although this is allowed as an access arrangement, the examination boards tend to think of it as somebody who has a physical difficulty in accessing the keyboard, because they won't allow you to have any subject banks, and they won't allow any user profiles or user-specific information to be included within the word prediction program. And if you did have a candidate who was keen to use a word prediction, it's very important that you start a conversation with the exam board as soon as possible and demonstrate exactly what they're doing, and for them to understand how that might impact the assessment, because they are very concerned about anything that might be predicting what the candidate would otherwise be trying to write. So just finally, the last few slides. Logistics of using technology in exams. It's always important to remember that it must be the candidate's usual way of working, but that could be in an exam, it could be at home or in class. So although schools are asked to document the usual way of working, it's also worthwhile asking candidates what they're doing at home, whether they are using text-to-speech on their phones or on their tablets, and to start to incorporate that into their school life, because that's often what's happening now. Students need to be confident and have practice using the technology in an exam setting. It is a skill to be able to use these types of tools and confidently, and for it not to absorb too much concentration and processing skills. The school needs to understand their support responsibilities, how they're going to set up their laptops, how they're going to set up the software, but it can be balanced against less requirements for human readers or scribe support. So where you may need an IT technician on call, one technician, that will be then releasing other staff who may otherwise have been providing one-to-one support. So what's next? Who needs to be involved if you're thinking about using assistive technology? The key thing is to engage with your IT staff and senior management. And although I keep raising the cost issue in there, this is what we find does engage head teachers and senior managers. As soon as you start to say, this could save us money, and this could make our results better as well. That's always the important thing to remember. But in the end, it's about enabling individual candidates to demonstrate their particular skills within their exams and assessments. It's also important to involve the candidate as early as possible when exploring technology options. When we look at how children and adults and elderly people start to use assistive technology, the more they are involved in the choice and selection and personalization of technology, the more they take the time to learn it and to embed it into their day-to-day life and strategies. So the more they feel that it's a personal choice, the more likely they are to just get on and use it. And also talk to you about exam board to ensure that you can get access to the PDF papers, and also in particular if you're looking at using speech recognition and word prediction. We do know we've got some schools who are piloting using speech recognition at the moment, so we may get some examples of best practice, but there's so few candidates who are looking at using those approaches at the moment that we can't say that there's a specific way of doing it, and it's always important to raise these issues as quickly as possible with the exam boards. So just finally, for some further information, the link at the top is to the BDA NTC website, so we've got quite a lot of information on there. You can also post questions to the whole committee and we'll try and find out. mtech.info is a database of assistive technology tools, mainly for further and higher education, but it gives you specific links through to tools and you can search that. And then finally, the last few links there are to the website run by Call Centre, particularly Paul Nisbet, who's part of the New Technologies Committee as well, which gives lots of information, case studies on how they've adapted using digital exams within the Scottish system. Now, just to remind you, the Scottish PDF system does allow always for answers to be entered into the papers, so it's slightly different to what we know we are going to get in the English and Welsh system. And there are two specific links there, one to reading with text-to-speech, which then gives you the instructions for installing all the different text-to-speech programs we've talked about, and the final link on the screen is the instructions for setting up iPads so that you lock down internet access and lock down access to any other apps. As schools now are quite frequently using iPads, they can be something that can be used quite easily as a reading device alongside a paper answer book at the same time. And that's it for my slides. I can see there are some questions, so hopefully Aaron will chip in and help us out.
That's fine, yeah. So can you actually see the questions, Abby? Can you see them if I send? Okay, let me send you. Right, okay, so this was the first question. This is quite an easy one for you. So you should be able to see that now. Have I sent it to you?
Please may we have details of your research or links to Southampton. So I'm part of the accessibility team within the Web and Internet Science group, and we develop open source assistive technologies. We contribute to projects to develop commercial assistive technologies, such as we're just embarking on one for reading maths equations, and we also evaluate assistive technologies. So we have been involved with evaluating e-books within schools, with evaluating the disabled students allowance within higher education as well. And I can put on the end of my slides the email address to the website address for our projects.
That's brilliant. Now, I have, right, okay, these, I'm going to send you two questions, and these both, I believe, are for the same kind of concepts, so SATs and Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2.
Okay, right. Okay, Key Stage for SATs access arrangements. Where we know assistive technology used at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 is more complicated because of the age of the candidates and the access to the technology. We have had looked at Key Stage 2 over the past year, because we've had teachers and schools asking us about whether computer readers can be used in the reading exam. At the moment, the Department for Education is saying that a computer reader can be used within the writing exam and within the maths exam, but it can't be used within the reading components at the moment. And again, they allow for some assistive technology use within the writing assessments, and there is some advice on the Key Stage 2 access arrangements website about using word predictors. But if you have specific questions, please fire them away to us, because we will try and nag and get answers out of DFE. they don't seem to be very up to speed with what can be provided for assistive technology routes. In terms of Key Stage 1, at that age range, most of the technology that we are dealing with wouldn't be appropriate, and it hasn't ever been raised with us about using something like an on-screen grid for writing or similar. And Key Stage 1 stats are changing at the moment, so I wouldn't be able to shed any light on that one at the moment.
Abby, if you on your control panel, if you click the little dustbin, then you can see which ones you've read. So I'm going to send you one more.
Okay.
There's still, I've sent. This one's about PDFs.
Okay, Pdf-Xchange viewer to enter text into PDF documents. So there are annotation tools within various PDF readers. The problem with the annotation tools is that if a PDF paper is created with security settings which don't allow you to save it or edit it, then there's no way of saving those annotations. If you on a PC, the exam boards have to give those permissions within the PDF paper for them to be saved and then printed off. Within an interactive PDF paper, as they call it, that is when there is actually a form field box that can be filled in and pasted. We have asked that the exam boards allow for annotations to be allowed, for permissions to be allowed within PDF papers. One of the concerns, though, with them allowing that is how a spell checker would be turned off within that program, and that gets quite technical, and you would need your IT person to ensure that the spell checker is physically taken off, the files are removed from the program. So hopefully that answers the question. It really depends on what board you're on, whether you're going to get an interactive paper or not. Okay.
I'm thinking the next question. I think this is more of a thank you rather than a question.
Thank you. Yes.
If you want to just read the question out to everyone, just so everyone.
Yes. Oh, I just deleted it. Sorry.
I think it says, thank you. Unfortunately, the person needs to go back to work, but they look forward to the recording. The information, they were very, very well received so far. Thank you to Abby and Aaron. That's that one. So let's send you this one. This one's about spelling, I believe. So let's just assign question to Abby.
What happens if you meet the requirements for a scribe in year 8 and 9, i.e. below average score in spelling? I used to having Dragon or a scribe and then improve spellings in year 10 and 11. I believe, and this is maybe where Katrina may be able to assist as well from a more educational perspective, that if you needed to be retested and you didn't qualify for a scribe using Dragon, but if your spelling rate didn't allow you to qualify for a scribe at year 10, then you wouldn't qualify for a scribe result. You have to have a test from year 9 onwards, and it lasts for up through to GCSEs. Is Katrina there? Able to jump
Hello?
in?
Yeah, you're there.
Hello. Yes, sorry. I think that's correct, Abi. Obviously, it's very good that she's made such good progress and improved her spelling, but that does sometimes happen, and it's unfortunate that she might not be able to get the full access arrangement she's had in the past.
But I would also suggest looking at making sure that the tests are done on a wide range of skills, including processing skills as well, because although spelling may have improved, there may be other aspects.
Other areas. Yeah.
Okay. That's been really interesting and useful. Thank you. Do you know where I can find out information on what technology can be used for children sitting Key Stage 2 SATs? As I said, I'll put the link into the slides to the DFE site, which currently only covers word processing and a bit of writing access arrangements. Okay.
I've sent you the next one.
Okay, what action should be taken if a school is not keeping evidence and are trying not to provide support. Well, from a legal perspective, and as somebody who is an SEN governor, the key words in terms of the Equality Act are that the school should actually be providing auxiliary aids and services as part of the Equality Act provision. That doesn't mean that a child has to be on the SEN register. That means that they have to have a long-term impact on their day-to-day life due to a disability, and dyslexia comes under the definition of a long-term impact on day-to-day activities such as studying and education. So if you're in a situation where a school was not keeping evidence or not trying to provide the support and you wanted to look at the use of assistive technology, it is worthwhile talking to your SENCO and your head teachers and your senior management and starting to ask about the auxiliary aids requirement under the Equality Act, because many schools aren't aware that they do have an obligation to provide this level of support under the Equality Act, that it's not just to do with whether a child is on the SEN register or not. And in terms of keeping evidence, then if you can gather evidence from home as well, then anything that can be passed on to the school. It is a concern, though. It is something that we have raised with the regulators, that essentially how do you appeal if the school isn't acting in the right way to support a child. And unfortunately it is a very grey area, but if you do have specific cases and examples, pass them on to the BDA helpline, because we do then use those when we're presenting those issues to the regulators and politicians as well. Okay. Okay, clarification of usual way of working required in FE. Does a word process need to be used in lessons, or can it be used in time tests, assessments and mock exams? The best form of evidence is to demonstrate the use of it within a timed test, an assessment or mock exams. Obviously most candidates, most students at that point are using word processors for assessment and assignments and coursework, but if you have an example of that as their usual way of working, where the examples are keen to have evidence is to show that it is related to a particular need. It isn't just purely a choice by the student that they would prefer to use a word processor. So evidence of the amount of content they are able to produce compared to handwriting, and evidence that that handwriting is illegible will also assist with that.
So I'm sending you the next one. I've had an email question come in as well, so I've sent that to Katrina, but this is the next one for you, Abi. I think it's, again, about primary schools.
Yes, adding about access arrangements for primary schools. Yes, we will add that onto the slides at the end.
Question for DFE, that's the next one.
Okay. A question for DFE: if a child really struggles with writing ideas or handwriting, they have difficulties typing as it is slow, however they have great ideas, can a dictaphone be used to record as a recording device to only record the child's voice? A recording could be made as a substitute for a scribe, and it can be transcribed in GCSEs, and so in Key Stage 2 I think it would also be considered instead of a scribe situation, that if they qualified for scribing, then that could be done by recording and for it to be transcribed. But again, I will check that out and put it into a slide.
Aaron, I've got the question that you sent to me.
Yeah.
The person's saying that they've got the correct qualifications to do assessments for access arrangements, i.e. under status. She understands that certain scores and standardised tests point the way to kinds of access, for example, Scribe or Reader, etc. From your slides and talk, do I understand correctly that once the tests have highlighted what kind of access, then you then follow your outline of possible assistive technologies? You do not assist. You don't assist for the specific technology. You assess and reveal whether they are eligible for a scribe, and if they are, then that automatically means they can either use a word processor, speech recognition, or word prediction. So you need to weigh up what you explained about the merits or otherwise of these. Does that make sense, Abi?
Yes, so well, from the access arrangement side, it is purely a qualification of whether the candidate qualifies for a scribe, and then what is their usual way of working. And whether if their usual way of working is word processing with spelling, then that is what is provided. If their usual way of working is speech recognition, that's what is provided. That's not necessarily part of an assessment. Similarly, with a reader, the access arrangements, when the application is submitted on behalf of the candidate, the proof is provided on behalf whether they qualify for a reader, and when the PDF papers are ordered through the modified paper route, they are automatically qualify for access to PDF papers if they've already met their requirements for an access arrangement. So the exam boards don't make any discrimination over whether it's a human reader or a computer reader, and candidates could switch between the two depending on what exams, because obviously things like geography, maths and science, it becomes much more complicated to read back using a computer.
Lovely.
Okay.
I've sent you
I've got another question here. Yeah.
Yep.
With non-interactive PDF for text-to-speech purposes, candidates can presumably use split screen if word processing too. Yes, they can use split screen if they are non-interactive, and also the exam boards that provided the PDF papers for all candidates online said that they had schools requesting that for candidates who weren't having a computer reader but were just using a word processor. So they found it easier to have both the paper and then type on the screen with a split screen. If you are lucky enough to be able to organise to have two monitors, that's particularly useful because then you can have more screen space for both the paper and the word processing document as well. But in the long term, the goal is that any paper that has an answer space, candidates will be able to write into it. Another question, how long before the exam do you have to ask for a PDF paper? Now, let me just have a look up. Now, the modified paper deadlines are quite far ahead of the exams, but that's because the system is designed in particular for papers that have to be modified for visually impaired candidates. So for the exams in May, June, the deadline is the 31st of January 2015, but we know that candidates do get requests, the exam boards get requests for modified papers after that, and if there is a PDF paper already available, then there shouldn't be any reason why they wouldn't provide it. They are all aware that the English GCSE paper is the most critical paper and the one that is going to be most provided as well. So as soon as possible it should be requested, but as officially the deadline is quite early, but we wouldn't anticipate that there would be any reason for the exam board not to provide the paper if it was somebody applying late.
The question I've just sent you is related to that one, I believe.
Yeah. How long does it take to establish a way of working as normal or usual? In the JCQ access arrangement guidelines, they say that best practice is to start applying for access arrangements as soon as the candidate starts the course. Obviously, that's impractical for most. Usual way of working can be documented in a number of ways, such as a timed test where a candidate is tested with a reader and without a reader, or if it's a handwriting test or an extra time test, then changing pens at a particular time. So you can set up examples of the usual way of working. But when it comes to using assistive technology, there is also the candidate being familiar with it. It's not something that you can let them see once or twice beforehand. And really, if you are looking at candidates using it in this summer's series, the 2015 May-June series, then they should be starting to become familiar with the technology now. And that will also then give you evidence of their usual way of working. Okay. Another question from DFE for Key Stage 2 pupils. If the child has difficulty reading, but if the comprehension questions and paper were read to the child by someone or by the computer, they would be able to verbally answer the questions. Is that okay? So at the moment, DFE say that the reading tests within the Key Stage 2 are testing reading skills, and they do not allow a computer reader within Key Stage 2 reading assessments, so you wouldn't be allowed to read any of the comprehension passages within the reading assessment at all, but they would be able to verbally answer them if they qualified for a scribe situation.
Okay, we've got one more question, Abby, and I was talking there while you were talking and I realised I had my microphone on mute. What I was just going to say is that I have had a question from someone asking if we can leave the questions on the recording. We haven't used anyone's names within the questions, so I don't see a problem. If people do have a problem, please send me a message now. But what I will do is I'll leave the questions on so people can listen to them at a later date. This will be the last question now, Abby.
Okay. So if we need to prove normal way of working, are they going to make past papers PDF papers so we can use them in mocks? So the PDF papers that are provided in exams are pretty much the same as if you get a PDF paper from an exam board website. Now there will be some that have problems working with computer readers. OCR changed their security preferences so that they don't work with text-to-speech programs, with all text-to-speech programs, so you can email them and ask for examples where the security settings are changed. But all the other exam boards say that their past papers are the equivalent of what they would provide. How accurate they are with computer readers is one of the problems. They are improving, so before they had to start thinking about providing PDFs, used to get quite a lot of errors and mistakes when they're being read aloud, so always start with the most recent papers, and in particular this summer's series, all the exam boards made particular efforts with the English papers to improve how they worked with text-to-speech programs, and they are actively working to improve their accessibility. So the 2014 past papers, once they become available, should be relatively close to what's available outside of that. There are also the modified versions of the papers as well, often made available, which are the large print ones as well, which again should be more accessible. But again, they can be requested directly from the exam boards as well. So I think that was the last question. I would just say there is my email address on the bottom of the slides as well, and also there's the BDA Tech website that you can contact the committee through. So if you do have any questions, often, as I said, we found this is a Pandora's box of areas. We might not know the answers, but we'll try and find it for you, and if we don't know the answers, we will try and bring it to the attention of those who need to be considering the questions. And it's always really useful to hear of any issues or any problems or good practice or difficulties from the chalk face. So please do get in contact with myself or the committee as well to help us move this area forward even more in the future.
No, Abby, it's been a really good webinar. I always love listening to what Abby has to say about this issue. As a user of text-to-speech and speech-to-text software, it would have been so much easier if I could use it in exams when I was doing them. For those people that can see the slide on the screen now, I am able to offer Claro Special Edition, so Claro SE for PC and for Mac at a discounted price, 10% off using that discount code. It's only available on them two products. There is other Claro products on our BDA store site, and as well as you can get text help read and write gold as well, but on the Claro SE editions I have been able to offer a 10% only until Sunday, 22nd of November. I'm going to drop everyone an email just to say that we will just do some slideshow editing on the video, and Abby will send me over the slides over the next couple of days, so we should get them to you within the next couple of weeks, hopefully. I will do my best to try and get them done by the end of this week for you. And for everyone that's saying thank you on the messages, no, thank you. It's a very good webinar we had. around 57 people attend out of 61 that said they could may attend. So that's a really good number of people. So thank you very much for listening, everyone. Abi, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. All the people saying thank you. No, thank you to you for staying for nearly an hour and a half. I'm going to close down the webinar. We will send, as Abi said, we will send out it. We'll send out the recordings. So thank you, everyone. Katrina, do you want to say anything else?
No, thanks very much, everyone, and thanks very much, Abi, as well.
No.
Our next one, Thanks. Aaron, did you want to say anything about the next webinar?
The next webinar, most of you will have received the email with the next webinar. And the next webinar is on the 4th of December. It is an afternoon webinar, so it is at 4 p.m. We are trialling it at different times just to see how that works. So it's just after school finishes. That one is on ADHD. It is designed, it is going to be more tailored for the youth offending teams, but it will be beneficial for all of you. You can again find the information out on the website and also through the email links that were sent out for the previous email. So thank you, everyone, again. I'm going to close down the webinar. Again, thank you, Abi, and good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night.